All right, everyone, welcome back to the Family Beatdown Fantasy Football League Update Show. God, you would think I would have that down by now. This is now the Week 12 update, and we're getting ready for Week 13, which, as you know, is the final week. Let me confirm that. The final week of our regular season. Playoff teams are all locked. All of us now that are outside looking in, all we can do is hope to play the spoiler. But before we get into our update, let's take a look at the college football update. Got it right this weekend. Everything went right this weekend. Notre Dame lost to Stanford. They were a very tough team. They play exceptionally well at home. They're now... Notre Dame came in as number 6 team. Stanford came in as number 9. They've now flipped positions. Stanford sitting as the number 7 team, and Notre Dame sitting at number 8. Looks like Notre Dame is not going to be able to break into that top 4 spot for the playoffs, although Stanford could. Next up for Stanford, they play this coming weekend against the USC Trojans in the Pac-12 championship game. It gets underway at 4:45 p.m. Pacific time on Saturday. I'm sure you're going to want to set your clocks to that. USC had a very convincing win over crosstown rivals UCLA, and that's the first time in the last 4 years the Trojans had been skunked 3 previous times. But were able to pull together a very convincing victory, especially in the second half, where USC just continued to roll, and the defense actually came alive. Who knew? So, at any rate, up next for USC, as I mentioned, is Stanford, and up next for Notre Dame is whomever they get in the bowl lineup. Let's take a look at our little league. So, real quick, we'll go over the win and loss. The winners this past week, Moist Mountain Men, nearly doubled up. Smell this. Even though Tyson had Tony Romo, who got knocked out with only 4 points with that broken collarbone again. Moist Mountain Men still put up 143 points. My goodness, smell this, only able to do 88. Grandpa riding a 3-game win streak. Grandpa would have beat every team in the league this week. Grandpa put up 171.8, powered in large part by Matthew Stafford's Thanksgiving Day performance, where he put up 5 touchdowns and 70 big fantasy points for Grandpa. So great win for Grandpa as he improves to 7-5 over people of color. Final score was 171 to 130. Also winners was Blood, Sweat, and Beer, improving to 8-4 with a 133 to 122 over Basic White Chicks, who dropped to 8-4. Big Blue wins 119 to 77 over the Rednecks. Big Blue at 8-4 now. Back That Pass Up wins only for the 3rd time this year. 170 to 110 over Third Down for what? And Swamp Donkeys doubled up, more than doubled up. Blue and Gold. Swamp Donkeys winners 165 to 80 over Jacob. Now let's take a look at the at the playoffs. The playoffs start next week. Teams are locked. Everybody's locked in. Everybody's secured their places. I guess the positions could change relative to the outcome over this last week. But here are your playoff teams. The number 1 team going into the playoffs at 10-2 is Moist Mountain Men. At the number 2 team at 9-3 is Swamp Donkeys. Number 3 team at 8-4 is Blood, Sweat, and Beer. Number 4 team, also at 8-4, is Basic White Chicks. Number 5 team, also at 8-4, is Big Blue. And number 6 team, making the playoffs in the first time making the playoffs in the history of the franchise for the Girard Invincibles. Grandpa, coming in with a 7-5 record, makes the playoffs this year. Way to go, Dad. Very happy for you. Let's see if we can't get a championship to come to 417 North 2nd Street. That would be really awesome. But we still got another week of games to play, so let's get into my prognostications. Smell This takes on Basic White Chicks. It's 118 to 114 on paper right now. Aaron Rodgers goes up against Detroit. Man, the Packers, what the hell? They peel off 6 games in a row, and then they lose 4 out of the last 5. And to division teams. They lost to the Bears on Thanksgiving. God, tear my heart out. And they lost to the Minnesota Vikings the week before. You can't lose to those division teams. Any rate, they get Detroit this Thursday night. Rodgers expected to do 41 points. I need to get a replacement for Alan Hearns, but I got plenty of depth on my bench. Other big point producers for me should be Ashlon Jeffries against San Francisco and Doug Martin against Tampa Bay. For the White Chicks, he's got Jameis Winston, who also put up 5 touchdown passes for the first time in his career last week. But Jameis goes against Atlanta, only projected to do 28. Chris Ivory is expected to do 11.5 points. And Lamar Miller 12 points for the basic White Chicks. All of that said, guess who I'm going to give the pick to? Smell this. Girard Invincibles at 7-5 versus the Rednecks, 2 playoff-bound teams. Or excuse me, 1 playoff-bound team and 1 team looking to wreak havoc in Dawn. Matt Stafford gets Green Bay. He's projected to do 42. Adrian Peterson, 21. He's projected to go in Seattle, which is a tough defense. Jeremy Hill, I think his name is questionable for Grandpa, but he's projected to do 10.5. And Greg Olson at tight end. At tight end is projected to do 11. For Rednecks, Breeze gets a nice matchup against Carolina, although Carolina is a very good team this year, the last of our unbeaten teams, projected to do 46.6. Other big projected stars are Matt Forte against San Francisco and Mark Ingram, both projected to do over 14. Ingram against Carolina. On paper, it's 132 to 134 in favor of Dawn. Grandpa's on that win streak. I'm going to give him the mojo. Grandpa gets the win. Let's talk about blood, sweat, and beer versus third down for what? Dani is cruising into the playoffs. She's got Tom Brady over Philadelphia, who's projected to do 45. DeAndre Hopkins almost 13 against Buffalo. And DeMarco Murray almost 12 against New England. On third down for what side of the equation? Cam Newton goes against New Orleans, projected to do 41 for Jed. Julio Jones is projected to do 18 against Tampa Bay, and Randall Cobb against Detroit, projected to do over 10. You do have Marshawn Lynch, who is out in your starting lineup, Jed. That said, Dani is too strong and is paying attention. Jed is not. Dani gets the win. Big Blue, Veronica at 8-4 versus Jacobs, Blue and Gold. For Veronica, she gets Carson Palmer, who is red hot this year, having a great year for himself, against St. Louis. 41 points, 40.5 points projected. Jonathan Stewart, Eddie Lacy, also projected to do strong. Ryan Matthews, wide receiver for Miami, is out, Veronica, so you may want to cover up him. You really can't afford to give up too many points. Although Jacob has been sputtering this year. He's got Matt Ryan against Tampa Bay. He's got A.J. Green against Cleveland, which should be a good matchup. And then Johnson from Arizona against St. Louis. Johnson's projected to do 12.7. I'm going to give the win to, I think Jake's going to do it this year. I think it's going to be an upset. I'm going to give the win to Jacob. Let's take a look now at Back That Pass Up versus the Moist Men of the Mountain. It's 110 to 91 in favor of Back That Pass Up now. Russell Wilson gets to start against the Minnesota Vikings. T.Y. Hilton against Pittsburgh, and Landry, Anderson, and Blunt all projected to do double digits for Rebecca. On Tyson's side of the equation, you still got Romo in there as the quarterback. Ty, you're going to want to get him out because he is not going to play this week. He's got that broken collarbone. He's done. So Tyson needs to get that fixed, but let's take a look at the rest of these. He's got Brandon Marshall with 11. Marshall went nuts with almost 25 last week for Ty. LaMarco Murray against Kansas City projected to do 10.3, and Darren McFadden at 12.8 out of his running back spot there in Dallas. That said, I'm going for the upset. I'm upset-minded right now. I'm going to give the win to Back That Pass Up. And in our last game, Swamp Donkeys 9-3 against People of Color 111. It's 136 to 94 in favor of Rick right now. Excuse me. Both Roethlisberger and Chad Johnson are listed as questionable. I think they're both out, actually, Rick. You got them currently in your starting lineup. That's a big part of your point production. You're going to want to get that taken care of. For Ryan, Blake Bortles, who is pretty hot, gets a start for People of Color. But Jimmy Graham is listed in there as the starting tight end, and he's on injured reserve now, as we all know. I don't think Ryan's going to pay attention. I think Rick is going to get the win. All right, so that's it. That's it for the week. We have one more week of regular season and playoffs begin on week 14. Everybody have a good week. See you next week. Bye-bye.